Joe Rogan had some really interesting comments about a very online backlash to an old Ford ad, and it's interesting for a number of reasons, but let's roll the clip so you can decide for yourself right off the bat here.
So someone said something, oh, it's the gay raptor because it's the smaller raptor. Some fucking moron.
True, he was right.
And so they actually painted it in gay colors.
There's big gays
very
out
gay
there.
raptor. Cool. But no one's not gonna buy raptors. Shut the fuck up.
Yeah, raptors are cool.
They're the shit. They're the shit.
Yeah.
I had one of those.
Okay, so that was from Friday's edition of Rogan's podcast. He said that Ford did a, quote, gay commercial for their Raptor truck line. And while the, quote, very gay Raptor debuted in 2021, the ad was resurfaced, I'm reading from Mediaite here, following the fallout from Bud Light's partnership with Dylan Mulvaney. And so because all of these sort of corporate pride ads were making their way around the internet, the Ford one made its way around the internet because Ford has a brand not entirely dissimilar from Bud Light, which is sort of mass palatability, also really popular in middle America. I just bought a Ford myself. A used Ford, but that is to say they last. But this is, isn't that their tagline, Ford built to last?
Built Ford tough? That's the one.
Sure.
Whatever. Anyway.
We're not sponsored by Ford.
I also am a Ford consumer, though, because they're, union American made. So I have an F-150, which is a relative of the Raptor. It's like a less fancy version of the Raptor, I think is my understanding of this.
Yeah.
Can you explain? I don't really understand what happened here. How did this very gay Raptor thing come about? It looks cool. It's like rainbow painted, basically.
Yeah, so that's the ad in question. It's one of those like really typical kind of corporate pride commercials, but it's interesting to people because you have this Ford Raptor, and I drove an F-150 growing up too. I love those trucks. They are fantastic. The Raptors are really cool, but it is in pride colors, and it's a couple of years old but what people thought, because that's one of the things on Twitter, is you can just take something without any context and start circulating it, and people are going to think the Ford ad is new, that they doubled down after the Bud Light and Target stuff. And that's like important context to why this started snowballing, because if you just see it and you don't realize it's a couple of years old, it looks like Ford is ignoring all of the sort of cultural warnings and boycotts where people say they just want their products to be apolitical. They don't want to feel like, actually we talked about this earlier in today's show, that there's this like very visceral feeling of my team or your team, you're with us or you're against us, you're with average Americans or you're with the elites. It looked like Ford, out of context, was doubling down on the Pride campaign in light of what happened to Bud Light and Target, but it wasn't a new ad.
I mean, here's the thing for me as a leftist. None of these companies are my ally in anything. Even if they, find it like financially beneficial to posture as being like gay allies or whatever. Everyone knows before the majority opinion shifted on that issue, they weren't going to say a freaking word about gay marriage or gay people or whatever unless they had some sort of a marketing angle. So let me just put that out there. I am under no illusion that these companies are my friend or my ally on literally any issue. But, you made the comment about conservatives were under the impression that this was like Bud Light, that this was, sort of mainstream palatability company. I just looked up the numbers. Support for gay marriage is 71% in America.
See, that's
so
what's...
it's like leaning into pride, which is why all these companies have done it, like doing their pride campaigns, painting the truck the rainbow colors and having it drive in a pride parade or whatever. It's because it has been a mainstream, acceptable 70+% support issue. So this is where, again, I come to, putting, obviously, I wildly disagree with the reaction, backlash to any of this. Not that I even care that much because it's just virtue signaling anyway, but the intense backlash to the progress that's been made in the LGBTQ movement. I also think that it's very dangerous for conservatives politically, because part of why they so underperformed, I should say, in 2022 was because they were effectively painted as extremists. Now, that was predominantly around abortion and around Stop the Steal, but you're getting yourself out on another 25% issue here when it comes to aggressive pushback against even the most basic tenets of, support for gay rights.
And that's what's so interesting about the pride question in general, that we have seen, for instance, I think about average parents who, we talked about this again earlier in today's show, voted for Glenn Youngkin. I bet a majority of them, even though they voted for a Republican governor, are supportive of gay marriage. Youngkin is probably supportive of gay marriage. I actually don't know where he stands in that. I would guess that he's supportive of it.
Yeah.
But people have come to see Pride, and there have been a lot of, I think, trenchant analyses by leftists over the last couple of years about how specifically the T part of the LGBTQ question, and specifically the way that it's become associated with kids, Republicans, and we've talked about this before, that has been a really effective line of attack, and it's very interesting to see how some of those analyses are being proven, I think, correct by the boycotts of Bud Light and Target, specifically because Pride is coming to be associated with that. And people see corporations going all in on Pride as them necessarily going all in on LGBT, Dylan Mulvaney, et cetera, et cetera. And that is fascinating to me because, like you said, that number it's a 70% plus issue that support gay marriage.
I mean, Rogan has this sort of baked in, Kyle always says this, I'm stealing from him, like normie instinct.
Yeah.
So when his guest was the one who brought up, like, oh, did you see Ford with this Pride stuff? He's like, this is bullshit. Like, nobody's going to not buy their truck because of this.
Yeah, that's true.
And so, because he has, I mean, on this issue, he has this sort of like normie instinct. And so similar to abortion, you know, I do think that when Republicans are talking about these tricky, genuinely tricky issues around kids and age of transition and what that process looks like and, you know, how you navigate this and what the rules and guidelines are, et cetera, then they're on stronger political footing. But even there, you know, this election cycle was supposed to be the one where that issue was really determinative. Mm-hmm. And there were a lot of Republican candidates, who, not just Ron DeSantis, who I think won in Florida for a host of, you know, but a host of reasons. But there were a lot of Republicans across the country who really leaned into those issues. And it didn't amount to much because I don't think it felt really super relevant to people's lives. You know, there wasn't some, in their school, this wasn't really a live issue. This wasn't something they were grappling with in a big way in their day-to-day life. And I think because now there has been so much creep beyond just the like laser focus on kids in schools to now freak out over a 2-year-old Ford Pride commercial that is no, you know, like is no threat to anyone. I think they have already crossed the Rubicon to being dramatically against where public opinion is on this issue. I mean, even on issues of like adults transitioning, the public is overwhelmingly in support of like people just living their lives and doing what they want to do.
And I think where that gets tricky, so I would actually reverse it. I would say it was like a Doug Mastriano in Pennsylvania, popular in rural areas, but sort of toxic in suburban areas. It was like the Stop the Steal stuff that didn't feel relevant to people's lives and made it much more difficult for Republicans to message on issues in the way that Glenn Youngkin did. And
right.
it made it like impossible. Like you can't be Glenn Youngkin if you're also a little Doug Mastriano and you're a little Stop the Steal, because where suburban voters are interested in what you say about like, you know, not affecting children and taking like what DeSantis has tried to do in Florida schools with mixed results. That stuff, I think, is appealing to normie parents, but I think they're not interested if you're selling it with Stop the Steal packaging or like fringe MAGA packaging. I think that's where it, and abortion makes that tough too. Like abortion brings it down, like would bring a Glenn Youngkin down. That's where people are just like, hold on, I'm either not voting or I'm going to vote for a Democrat because I'm going to go vote for John Fetterman. I'm going to go vote for you know, someone else because that's a little too far.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's right. And, you know, there's just, I think the strongest polling issue for Republicans on trans issues is around this question of like women's sports, right? Where you have a majority who say, no, I think it, you know, however you feel about that issue. But also, you know, usually it's Democrats that will fixate on these issues that are really side periphery issues. So now you have Republican legislatures passing whole laws in their states that apply to like literally one kid in the whole state, you know? And so, okay, you are technically winning on the issue in terms of public sentiment, but are swing voters voting on this issue? Like how relevant are they feeling it to be to their lives? So even on the strongest issue, I think it's a losing proposition. I think we saw that in 2022. And then when you expand it to like a freak out over anything that has anything to do with gay people, it seems to me you are dramatically on the wrong side of that issue, and that's increasingly where this has gone.
It's so similar to the conversation we had about Ted Cruz's Uganda tweet being controversial with people like Jenna Ellis, specifically because I think it's an impossible balance for Republicans to strike, for them to be normie, sort of anti-woke enough to bring in the normie, like Youngkin voters, without then also being for like a 6-week abortion ban and, you know, like you said, like getting into transitions for adults, et cetera. So like I do think some of this stuff appeals to swing voters, but you have to bring them in with other things. It can't be this paired with Stop the Steal, paired with 6-week abortion bans in the way that Republicans have been going about it, because it is toxic. There's no question.
It's the anti-woke mind virus. That's what I said in that segment, and that's really what it is. So just like with people who are woke, the American public is going to be on board with you, like, hey, everybody should be equal and treated equal under the law, and like, let's have civil rights. And people are like, yes, we're on board with that. And then when it's like, let's, you know, cancel and censor and have these like authoritarian tactics in service of it, or let's go really far and like, you know, cancel you if you're even like vaguely say the wrong thing on an issue that is difficult. People are like, no, we're not on board with that. And it's sort of a similar thing that has happened on the right in terms of, you know, people may have been with them on step 1 of this progression, but by the time you get to step 100, you've lost them.
Yeah, just as we wrap up, it reminds me of what Camille Paglia said in, I think it was 2017. She had a really interesting point, which is to the question of overreach. Like the Obama administration, Obama finally comes out in support of gay marriage. Biden does it first, which never forget, that was hilarious. But he feels like he has the wind at his back, and his Department of Education overreaches with the authoritarian tactic of sending a Dear Colleague letter that totally changed and overstepped every school's ability to sort of work out these issues on their own, and said sex and gender identity had to be conflated in Title IX, which led to a lot of the sports backlash. And Paglia said, she was like, that's when I knew Hillary Clinton was going to lose, when that became a campaign issue. And that is before I think we saw Republicans take some of the stuff and run with it in the way they have by 2023. And so the overreach on Democrats, Republicans are not being careful enough to prevent overreach when they're pushing back on the Dem overreach, which is sort of interesting because the Dem overreach is exactly what they're reacting to.
Right.
It's a vicious
everybody
cycle.
gets captured by their like fringe, way too online.
That's true.
Base. And
That's true.
I think that's where we are. Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now, and Saagar and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us, and if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.